in our discussion today. That's more than any other breakout session, and I think it's a testament to two things. It's a testament to it's a testament to the work that has been done on the ground in the countries in Africa. The excellent work that's been done for years. And we have, I won't say much of that work because there's so much being done, but a portion of that very well represented here today. The other thing that it represents is the complexity of this issue of human trafficking. Let me point out, we are going to try and work through 4 segments of our discussion today. There will be an introductory, or our first segment lasting about 40 minutes on immediate or local issues. Another 20-minute section on more national and international cooperation approaches to human trafficking. Then we'll have about 15 minutes for participation from the audience. And then we will have a 15-minute wrap-up. We hope to use our 90 minutes roughly in that way. We have, I'll do some brief introductions right now. I would encourage you, each one of these individuals has done marvelous work, and please go to the website and look for their longer biographies. But I will start off by mentioning Ken and Deline Mark, who is CEO of Hope Africa, the outreach group for the Anglican Church here in South Africa. Dr. Reverend Cecilia Popina Mahlala, National Coordinator of Talitha Kum in South Africa. Talitha Kum is the new national order dedicated to combating human trafficking. Thank you, sister, for being here. Sorofo Mocheka, I'm doing my best to not mispronounce your name. Sorofo is the founder and director for Youth and Children's Affairs in the Kara Development Ministries here in South Africa. Over here we have Han Yisile Moza. Mom Kanya, I apologize. I'm just going to try and do a better job with that. She is the director and founder of the Berea Hillbrow Home of Hope for Girls in Johannesburg. Sister Diana Kanyere, National Coordinator of Talitha in Zimbabwe. And then Lisa Churcher is here working for the Institute, Human Trafficking Institute, particularly working to help build capacity in the criminal prosecution area. On this side we have Hira Aftab, who is the founder of Our World 2, and also a member of ACWA's executive committee. Here to thank you for being here. Ambassador David Saperstein, it's hard to sum up exactly where he has been and all he has done, but currently he is chair of a commission in the Department of Transportation in the United States government that attempts to work on human trafficking. But much more about your background will come out, I'm sure, Ambassador. And Ambassador Michel Veuthey, Mr. Ambassador, welcome. Ambassador Veuthey is the Ambassador Against Human Trafficking for the Sovereign Order of Malta and based in Geneva. We're more than happy to have all of these individuals with us. Dr. Ahmed will moderate the first portion of our discussion, and I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Fred. We are glad that you are here. What we want to do is, human trafficking is a very emotive issue. It's a very serious issue. It's an issue that affects so many people silently. We don't hear much about it because of the shame connected to it, but we are blessed today to have wonderful people who have worked in this sector, who are intervening in the lives of people. So in this segment, we have 40 minutes to kind of look at what is happening on the local ground. And we have 6 people to fit into this 40 minutes. What we want to do is to have a dialogue. That is why we intentionally set up this room in this way. So when they are speaking, when the people who are working on the ground are speaking, please take note, and then you can also contribute when it comes to our discussion session. We want them to listen more to what you have to say because they have the experience. So without further ado, I would just go from no particular order, but I will start with Darlene, you will start. You have 2 minutes. We want to be very specific in terms of what we are doing and what we want to emphasize. We know you do a lot. If we give you a whole day, you will not speak all of it. So we will have some people here who are going to be monitoring the time. When they raise 1 minute, then it means that you probably have to stop. So I will give it to you just to concise, tell us who you are and what you are doing and what impact that you are thinking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm the lead I'm the lady from Hope Africa, and within the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, we have quite an extensive program that looks at gender-based violence and femicide, including human trafficking. I think we were alerted to the dangers of human trafficking and our children being trafficked just before the 2010 World Cup when it came to South Africa, because we looked at the statistics so that in Europe, there were about 20,000 sex workers brought in for the actual Soccer World Cup. And so we realized that our children were not going to be safe. And we created an interfaith network to encourage clergy to understand what is human trafficking, to educate their communities, to see and to try and identify how, what it looks like. And it's very easy, and currently that's what we continuously try to do, is to say, do not keep silent because then you're being complicit. We have journeyed with many young people and old people who've been able to arrive as survivors, not victims anymore. But my friend Rebecca, who has a master's degree in media studies, an advocate for against human trafficking because of her own situation, she suffers continuously with depression and she's unable to find employment. And so I think it's important that we hear and governments need to hear that organizations like us need to be funded more so that we can build capacity for people to understand and stop human trafficking. If we ask the church to tell us what poverty looks like, they can tell us, But if you ask them to tell us what human trafficking looks like, it's very difficult for us to say what it is. But we know that it happens. We have men and women who come to church, but go home and tell their children, why are you sitting here? Why don't you go out and bring in some money? And so that's that we try to get churches to speak up about situations like that, cultural practices where young girls are promised to older men for financial gain for the family, and it happens where chiefs promise families money and they send their daughters to cities and they never see them. Young boys are kidnapped so that they can be used in house burglaries and carjackings because they're small enough to fit through windows. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Darlene. We will then now move to Reverend Dr. Cecilia Popina. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Sister, as the doctor has said, I am a coordinator of Trafficking South Africa, the anti-human trafficking network, originated and founded by religious like I am, originally from Rome. We realize that we are not making impact to our people whom we tell ourselves that we are serving, and yet we are not having the smell of the sheep we are serving. So by so doing, then Trafficking South Africa was born, that the church should take full responsibility to educate the people they are serving about human trafficking. It's rare that we speak about it before, but since 2020, then we started talking about it. We have got a privilege to stand behind the pulpit and share sermons to our people. But it was rare that we include topics like or regarding human trafficking, share the education of them about the realities of human trafficking, until the reality of South Africa and the type which is prevalent in South Africa, organ harvesting, and that the target group being children between the age of 2 and 8, that is killing Africa. And why all these things in Africa? Does it mean that there's something wrong we have done? No. But because there is a really boss behind it who wants that little lever from the black, young, little, vulnerable, little girl, then is ready to have it, no matter what. So the sisters stood together, and we realized that alone as sisters, we cannot do anything. So we started having the youth on board, that at least we use what is called peer group teaching. We train them, and once we realize that they are on board, then we use them, we go with them together to educate their own peer groups. And we found it really impactful because more and more youth are now on board and they speak one language. So we are here also as Talented in South Africa, taking this advantage and thanks to the G20 organizers that we now are going to talk to our peer groups, interfaith groups. Human trafficking, it's real in South Africa. Let us remember the Jocelyn Smith. It is real, and she is no more. So it is responsibility of you and I that we hold hands and face this monstrous crime, which rips our people's dignity, and it is a crime ripping out our people's rights. So this crime, we have all better face it together.
Thank you so much, sister. We now move to Zolofo. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. What brought us into human trafficking initially, being a young man who
Can we
grew
not
up in the
capture
township
these
of
people
Praeveni
with that one?
in Johannesburg. You find that the level of poverty that is there in the township leads some of our young ladies been having to go into this work of sex work. But the work that some of them don't go in voluntarily, so but they're actually pushed by their own parents, where you find mothers telling their kids that we cannot sleep hungry when we are here and we are a girl. So you are a girl, you must go and make a plan for us so that we can sleep, so then we can have food on the table. So then that thing raised eyebrows. My first encounter with such an experience was in 2008. Then we, as an organization, decided that no, we have to do something about this. So that to raise awareness and also to assist our young girls, particularly in the townships, so that they don't have to fall prey to such conditions. So we then came up with missing awareness walks, where we would have an annual walk every year, and then we'd involve the local schools, and then we'll have young children that coming from those schools to participate in that. Then we should, during those walks, we'll have the Department of Correctional Service, the local magistrate office, the police involved, to come and share awareness about such conditions. But we didn't only stop there. We also realized that most of the kids in their households, they are not receiving the love, the empathy that is needed from their parents. So most of them, they end up having a low self-esteem. Then they'll end up falling prey to whoever that can promise them that kind of comfort that they need. So we started having childhood trauma dialogues, partnering with the University of South Africa, UNISA, to host these dialogues. We recently had another one in June, where we just brought in the professionals to come and talk and come up with solutions. But not only that, we also host annual women's seminars in August, where we bring together women speakers and bring together all these women and try to connect. We try to create a network where we know that we can teach them and help them on how can they be self-reliant and how can they empower themselves without necessarily having to engage in some of these things, because traffickers, they prey on women, they promise them jobs that are non-existent, education that is non-existent, only for them when they arrive in Dubai they find that it's another different story or wherever in the world that they'll be going to. So that in a nutshell is what we do as an organization. But we also incorporated men's seminars where we launched the first one last year, where we wanted to talk to the men as well, so that we also groom them and show them that there's no need for them to actually partake in such, that they can be advocates to save the women that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what we have noticed from the first three interventions was the reality of human trafficking and modern slavery. It exists in our communities. And the second thing is that we have learned here is the context of it is poverty, is the lack of jobs, that most times it starts even from the parents, telling the children, how can you not go and bring us money when we are going to sleep hungry? They don't know that their children are getting into trafficking, but I think that the need to have these children go and bring in something is also a driver. So I just want you just to notice that. We're going to move to Madame Karsile Monster, please.
When you switch on your microphone, just leave it on because of the recordings, please. So we can switch on all our microphones.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kanisile Moata. I'm working for an organization that I founded in the year 2000. I was not into charity. I had my own business that was taking care of my biological children. But when I saw children on the street, I was so much interested to know why were they on the street instead of school, because they were so young and they were girls. What I discovered there is that those children were not from Gauteng, which is Johannesburg. They were not from here. They were being trafficked from all 9 provinces of South Africa to be used in brothels. I didn't know much about brothels because I was from Natal. All what I knew was just living with community there. But when the children told me about that, I didn't think of starting an NGO. I started taking the children and removing them from the streets and visiting the brothels, telling the pimps and drugglords to give away, they mustn't touch our children because our children will defend them with our lives. I was not aware that this journey is continuing. 25 years where we are now, I'm still doing the same thing. I believe in education. All the children that come through our hands, they go to school. Now we have 2 homes. I'm trying to make sure that time doesn't leave behind. We have 2 homes where we separate the children according to their ages, because I believe that each and every one can do something for themselves. So now what I'm seeing is, we're working so hard on human trafficking. The figures of human trafficking, the gender-based violence. South Africa has got the highest rate of gender-based violence in the world. So what are we expecting about our children? And we are here we need to talk about our role in protecting our children. And the faith-based organization have made sure that we survive, because I don't have funders. If they were not there, my children wouldn't be eating. But yeah, I'm grateful that today we are here. We're still going to talk more about what we think needs to be done. Funding is the most important thing, because if I was not having the support I'm getting, maybe I would have closed down. Nobody would have known. And the justice system does not exist in South Africa. I'm sorry to say it, because the cases that I have, they drag over 10 years. A case dragged 5 years. Now the child is continuing to be a victim. She'll have to not go to school. I have to go to court with the child. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we'll bring in Lisa, you at the end of it. We'll go to Sister Kanyeri, and we want to hear the good work that you are doing. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have already heard that I'm Sister Diana Kanyere, and I'm from Zimbabwe. As a young nun, I met a terrible incident whereby in a family, in a parish that I was serving, a little girl was stolen to come to South Africa by a friend. So this family, because I had no priest within that parish, I was the person responsible. So the whole community phoned me to say, we have missed a child. And I said, a child has missed how old? 3 months. So I said, what could have happened? They say a friend who stay in South Africa has come to pick the child. So I said to my good Lord and Shepherd, so if the community is coming to me, what is it that they want me to do? Even the parents of the children. So I dashed into the church and I just knelt down as the community was coming. There was a lot of cry within the voices. And then I closed my eyes. I didn't know what to do because they thought I was the rescuer of the incident. So as I knelt down, they all came. They were like a full room like yourself. And then the parents, the husband and the wife, just knelt close to me like this. And in the Catholic Church, we've got a Blessed Sacrament. So it was like, I was like this. So the power of prayer that you see written on my jacket is not like something fishy, but it works. I've experienced that trafficking, you can counter it through prayer. So what did we do? We prayed for 2 good weeks without knowing where the child was and reassuring the family that we would get the child. So here in South Africa, we're hearing children are being taken, they needed the organs or something of the sort so that they could get money. So end of day, to cut the story short because it's a long story, we found the child through prayer. We got a telephone call the second week to say, this lady who stole the child intending to harvest the organ felt something that she said, no, I mustn't sell the child and get the organ. So she phoned to say, can you come to South Africa and collect the child? We said, no. I said, no, you come back with the child. So she asked the family members to be engaged and they brought back the child to our parish. So we received the child as a community. So the child is not only for the family, but for the community as well. So as a whole community and as a church, we prayed and she was baptized and I became the godmother. So I'll show you the photograph because last week I was with her. She's now informed too. So we thank God Trafficking is a reality. It is a disruption of communities, a disruption of families, and a disruption of the church, the relationship. Hence, we have really to take it. I myself, I take it seriously. And what am I doing in short? What is Sister Diana doing? Sister Diana is moving around the diocese as a national coordinator. I'm training the leadership, local leadership, the leadership for the church, and then the leadership for various communities. I'm training them so that they are aware of what is human trafficking, what is smuggling, what are the factors contributing, what can we do. So this is exactly what I'm doing. Not only that, I also have a wing of young people because they are the change agents and they are the most highly unemployed. And when they come into Zimbabwe, they focus more on the girl child and on the young people who are unemployed. It's because of inequality, discrimination, and poverty that we have to fight as a church and us as faith organizations. So lastly, I have developed now a model for those who have survived human trafficking. In human trafficking, we have 3 stages in short. The first stage of our people in Zimbabwe is that they have not had that there is human trafficking. That's the primary stage. The second stage is our people we have already had, but they are going through poverty, domestic violence, and they say it's better to go to Kuwait where I'll get exploitation unlike to stay in domestic violence and poverty. So despite giving them information, they don't pay heed. It's a very sad group that way. They'll only come back. The third stage, it's when they've gone, then they experience the sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, harvest, and all sorts of cruelty. Then they come back to us in Zimbabwe. There they are. We are landed with them. In my database, there are 1,000 of them who are back home, but I have managed to work with 125 at the moment. We are working, offering psychosocial support, counseling, and all that kind of stuff. This is what I'm doing with them. They've got a lot of trauma. Trafficking is cruel. Hence the call for the interfaith community. It disrupts the dignity of the human person. God created us in this dignity, but it is taken off. It is a violation of the whole rights of a person that as she comes to you in your office, end of day you can't do much but to listen to the cry and the experiences and offer that support. So hence the call, as we gather and as we sit in this room, it's not a topic that is very nice because if you have experienced it, would be all crying because the dignity of a person is being destroyed, in particular as Africans. And hence we need the government to intervene, the G20. Thank you. That's Sister Diana.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you have said. So in short, before I bring in Lisa, who will talk on the criminal justice part of our conversations for today, summary, human trafficking is an illicit trade. It is a trade. There is money behind it. The parents or the family thinks that if they send their children, they would come back with money. But they are being extorted, as Kevin said today. Annually, there's over $260 billion of illicit profit made from girls, boys, men, women, who are brothers, sisters, children of families. That is
What we haven't even said, and I used to work in this field for so many years, is that most of them who end up coming back, they are lucky. What about those who die? And their parents are still hoping that they will send in some money. And most of the parents do not even know that their son, that their daughter, whose kidneys have been harvested or who have gone through traumatic experiences, have died. And they are still hoping to have their children home. And that is how serious this conversation is. And so I'd like to pass on the mic now to Lisa, who is working on, systems of prosecution. And Lisa, I'll pass on to you. This is a crime. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm Lisa, and I'm the Global Program Manager for the Human Trafficking Institute. We are an organization that focuses on prosecution element of combating trafficking. Our model is that you cannot stop trafficking without stopping traffickers. That it's really important to do the amazing work that my fellow panelists here are doing to raise awareness, to rescue victims, to support them in their rehabilitation. But if you aren't going after the traffickers, they're going to find other people to exploit. They're in it for the money. It's an economic crime, and so you have to arrest them, you have to convict them, you have to go after their money. And that's how you stop other people from being victimized. So we work, we partner with governments to help enhance the capacity of the justice system response. We have programs in Uganda, in the US, in Belize, in Kenya, and here in South Africa, where we have a memorandum of understanding with the National Prosecution Authority, and my main partner here is Lizelle, who's also can weigh in later. And so what we do is we invest specialized expertise to help train police and prosecutors on how to identify trafficking and how to respond effectively in a victim-centered and trauma-informed way. And part of the problem is that people don't know trafficking when they see it, when it shows up at their police station. They have these images of what trafficking looks like. They think of women going to the Middle East and being exploited. I was in Uganda for 6 years. That's what everyone thought of, women who go to the Middle East and are exploited. And that is a problem, but 80% of trafficking in Uganda is domestic, globally as well. People aren't seeing the cases in front of them, so you have to train police to identify it when they see it. Then they have to know what to do with it once they've identified it. So how do you charge those cases? South Africa has an excellent law, Uganda has an excellent law, so does Kenya, but it's relatively new, people aren't familiar with it, they need to learn how to use it better. So we help develop charging manuals because everyone uses what they're comfortable with. They'll go to the same crimes they've always charged with. So we help them make it easier for them to actually charge trafficking and then to know how to build a case so that you can get convictions. And I want to highlight, Sister over here mentioned, as South Africans will be aware of, the Jocelyn Smith case, and the NPA did an excellent job in getting a conviction of the traffickers in that case, which is it was a difficult case. We still don't know what happened to Jocelyn. So getting a conviction of those traffickers was excellent. So that's, we didn't do that, the NPA did that. But we want to see enhanced criminal justice response to stop traffickers. That's the work that the Human Trafficking Institute does, but it's also the work that governments can be investing in themselves. And one of the things we've talked about is the importance of going after the money, as well as going after the traffickers, hitting them where it hurts, but also that money can be used to fund the capacity building and the combating trafficking work of the government. That's me.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. So there are three things that, as we conclude this segment, that we want you to think about, and we also want our interveners to think about. Number one is the issue of recruitment. And especially now, digital recruitment would be a very, very important area that we can look at. Everybody now has a phone, TikTok, whatever it is. They see flashy photos, and it's very easy
to be attractive. So how can we look at digital recruitment and how can we address that, if not combat digital recruitment of children? Number two is we can see that each one of us is working in an individual capacity and in silos. You know, it came out of our heart, we will respond, but for us to be able to achieve a systemic way of doing things, then it calls for collaboration. Because, for example, if there was money, one individual organization cannot have the capacity to absorb the funding and to be able to account for it. So as faith communities, how can we collaborate better? So I wanted to look at specific areas that we can look at and impose recommendations. The third part is capacity building. We have heard it, you know, the capacity, whether it's education, whether it's raising awareness. What are the key priority areas in capacity building? So this is what I wanted to think about as we come back after we have gone after this next session to answer both our interveners and also you in the audience. So I'd like us to go back to Fred. We were able to save about 5 minutes, so we can add the 5 minutes into our conversation. So thank you so much for being very concise and precise in what you have said. So Fred, back to you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Perhaps you noticed, and perhaps you didn't, that with Lisa's comments, we made an important transition. There are a couple of aspects. When you think about trafficking, most of the attention, most of the reaction is to the act which has already happened, to the victims, to their support, to their rehabilitation, to their recovery. What Lisa talked about in speaking to the criminal justice system comes to the act of prevention. Prevention and how you disincentivize the criminal act of trafficking. Kevin Hyland's presentation, I hope all of you have received a copy of the call to action that was the foundation of his presentation. That has been distributed. Please, we have plenty, make sure that you get one. The reality is, friends, brothers and sisters, the international system as it's now configured incentivizes trafficking. Systems produce what systems are designed to produce. And changing the system, enhancing criminal prosecution is one aspect of this, an important aspect. Monitoring supply chains. If companies and even governments, if just the G20 governments in their procurement were to make their supply chains transparent, it would have a huge impact on trafficking in a global sense. Now again, you can sense the transition. We've gone from very local circumstances, very local efforts, where the religious sisters and all of the faith-based organizations have been doing immense work for the last 25 years and longer. But in fact, trafficking in a global scale has not decreased, rather it has increased. So we're shifting now to talk about systemic aspects that we hope to be able to address. And I guess if I were to put it in a sentence, it would be hoped that because South Africa and the AU are a part of the G20 now, they would actually benefit in terms of more effective work against human trafficking because of that membership. I don't think that's quite a reality, but Kevin, that's what we're speaking to, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, Fred, and I think you sum it up there well. And when Fred's talking about the systems that are developed even in response to trafficking. For example, some countries have national referral mechanisms, like the UK and other European countries, that they're required to have under international law. They actually marginalise victims more. The decision in the UK as to whether someone's a victim takes over 2 years. A decision on whether you're a victim of any other crime takes about 2 minutes, or a very short period of time. The US has what's called the Communications Act, which was brought in to protect the internet when it was in its infancy. But that is now being used by traffickers to advertise all sorts of things, child abuse and all these things that companies get away with, and say, well, it's nothing to do with us because we're not publishers under the Communications Act. If any of us walked outside and started shouting, where can I find children to abuse? Where can I find people to traffic? We would be arrested in minutes. But on the internet, you can do it thousands of thousands of times a minute, and nobody intervenes. So the systems, as Fred says, need to be addressed. We need to start cutting things off, and then we need to bring in where and who is responsible. Again, and I know in South Africa you have great data protection laws. In Ireland, TikTok will find 1.4 billion euros for data protection breaches. Data protection breaches against us, the people in Europe. Whilst other things are going on in companies that may benefit from Europe, and they operate in Europe, the children are down mines. 22,000 children die every year as a result of hazardous and exploitative work. That's like 110 Boeing 737s crashing a year. Yeah, nothing is said about it. So as Fred says, we need to change the systems, and I think that's what this process is aiming to do.
Kevin, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I just point out the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, include a goal of eliminating human trafficking. Kevin was the author of that SDG and has been active in this sphere, again, for at least probably about a quarter century, but we're very happy to have you. Michel, we're not going to come to you right now, but we will come back, and I want to have you kind of elaborate on what Lisa began touching on. I think it will be insightful for people in this room to realize that the National Prosecuting Authority has a unit dedicated to this and is seeking to build capacity there. So, just heads up, is that okay? All right. We have on my right three people who are going to now take a few minutes. Kira, I'd like you, from a youth perspective, just what stands out to you, what is important, what needs to be done. I'll just leave it there. You and I have talked. I know what you want to talk about. You do as well. Take 3 minutes or so, if you would, state your priorities, your perspective. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Hiram. Yes, I am part of the ACWA Executive Committee, and I'm also a member of the youth team, and the youth forum, I should say. But I'm also an expert in the field of migration and displacement, and I've also founded an organization called Our World 2, which is a platform dedicated to humanizing the narrative around refugees and displaced communities around the world. And I've also conducted extensive research into how the EU is using anti-trafficking and anti-smuggling laws to criminalize humanitarian assistance. Now, when we talk about the youth, and it was already mentioned about digital recruitment, who better place to combat and dismantle human trafficking networks than the youth? We are online. We know how to navigate these spaces. We know how to find our way around digital platforms and also social media. And many of us have already seen the effect of people younger than us who are already being influenced by a known human trafficker like Andrew Tate. We've seen the effects on people in our age group, and who better to combat this than us? And in reference to the SDGs, it's already been on the youth agenda for a while now. So at ACWA, we've actually developed the Interfaith Development Goals, or the IDGs, which sit in complement to the SDGs. And two of these directly speak to the trafficking or the protection of vulnerable communities, including women and girls. And that is, from a youth perspective, to be honest, it's already on our agenda to address, and also we are the best place to be fighting this online.
Thank you very much, Kira. We'll probably come back to you later. When we do get to the discussion about proposals, specific concrete steps to take, we will need to kind of ping back and forth between a global perspective and a local perspective. I think there are things, and I'll kind of traffic sorry, I shouldn't use that word. I will poach on your area a bit. I wonder if there isn't collaboration within the faith community when you're talking about things that can be done, capacity building within the faith community. And I think other countries around the world, there might be best practices about how faith communities have collaborated. But then we'll also need to address things that we want, and we're here because we want the G20 as a system to pay attention and to change and to adopt as a priority this topic of trafficking. Ambassador Saperstein, again, you've been there in the Department of Transportation for the past 4 years and are keenly attuned to what's happening in terms of budget cuts and other things. Well, again, I know what you'd like to focus on. Please take a few minutes to do so.
My engagement on this issue over the last 25 years has been on the policy end. It is policy that created the government institutions that actually address this problem, that ensures that there are resources passed by Congress to allow these institutions to do their work, to actually see in terms of prosecution as a policy that prosecutors have to treat survivors of particularly sex trafficking as victims and survivors not as criminals, that there have to be support systems in our social service networks that are government funded to ensure that a lot of what you folks do actually can take place and have the resources to be able to do that. This was something that for a long time was bipartisan, as was, if you think about it, human rights in general, as is the international religious freedom area, 3 areas I've worked in my career here. And one of the last speeches President Trump gave at the end of his first term was, "We renew our resolve to redouble our efforts to deliver justice to all who contribute to the cruelty of human trafficking, tenaciously pursue the promise of freedom for all victims of this terrible crime." And now, 4 years later, within a short period of time, he's virtually dismantled the entire infrastructure of everything that we are doing to fight human trafficking. And this has enormous consequences for the entire world. It really does. Let me just quickly point out what's happened. It's very hard to actually count up the number of programs or resources or the money going to human trafficking, because often they're part of broader programs. Programs that deal with labor rights and how supply chains are going to deal with trafficking, but it may not only be trafficking. The Human Rights Bureau that deals with human rights, women's rights, children's rights, the right of labor unions to organize, all of that has an impact on trafficking. But we can look very quickly at what's happened. The cuts that have been implemented here, beginning with the Human Rights Division, that technically is called the Department of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, has been utterly gutted and dismantled. Here, 2/3 of the staff was let go. The rest is spread out in different parts of the State Department. Here, it is a tremendous loss to this. In the Department of Human Services and the Department of Justice, the offices of immigrant support, offices of victims of crimes, offices of a range of other things that affect us have either been shut down entirely or substantially cut. The Washington Post reported that 69 programs in the International Labor Office of the Department of Labor, 69 programs that deal with human trafficking, either entirely or in part, have been dismantled. A loss of $500 million, $500 million. So obviously, because we know how little goes to human trafficking as part of the bigger budget, it was a lot more in the contextual things, labor rights in general, free organized rights to live, but a lot of it had to do with human trafficking. And then you have the programs directly on it. The USAID shut down, and all of the programs on trafficking are now gone. Here. And the TIP office, the Trafficking in Persons office, one of the things I'm most proud of my career was helping to draft that legislation, getting it through, getting it resourced, getting it working the way it does. The annual report that is, as with the Human Rights Report and the Religious Freedom Report, a blueprint for embassies all around the world of other countries to use as a blueprint to how to pursue these issues. The tip office, substantial cut in staff, now low enough that we will not be able to do the annual report. It is no longer an independent entity, but merged into DRL. That's been dismantled. It's under its aegis, even though now I think it has more staff than DRL is. It's still under their aegis. So it is in utter disarray, and at a time you might have hoped other countries would step up to fill that gap that we see President Trump creating. Here, you see other countries, the UK, Germany, Brazil, other major powers, Australia, here cutting back on their foreign aid, and many of them cutting back on their trafficking programs as well. This has enormous implications for the extraordinary work that we just heard before. Here, and for everything that we're talking about achieving here. And I just thought it would be helpful to have a sense of that. Obviously, we as religious nonprofits in a broader NGO and civil society program have to mobilize to ensure our governments all do better than they're doing. And then we need, that's from the bottom up in terms of advocacy for programs and resources. But from the bottom down, the G20 can play an absolutely crucial role. And rather than talking on that directly, I'm going to turn to my colleague who has some great ideas of how to do that.
Ambassador, thank you very much. I'll just pause for a quick second. In the United States, we have budgeted roughly $250 billion, $250 billion a year to deal with drug trafficking. Or counterterrorism is much more than that. Less than $1 billion a year, we believe. It's difficult to sift it out to combat human trafficking. So it's already a difficult situation. It just increases the urgency of gaining the attention of the G20 to prioritize this to a higher degree. So thank you for highlighting that. Ambassador Michel Veuthey is in Geneva. He has a long history of working with the International Red Cross. But he also has a long experience as a lawyer and is aware of international law. You had some very interesting, specific suggestions, Mr. Ambassador. Would you please go into those? Thank you.
Could I start?
Please do. Please do.
Actually, I share exactly what my colleague said, and unfortunately, there was a frequent visitor to the foggy bottom, and I had met many interesting people. And I would say that for international law, public international law, it's the same story. We are going from celebrations. In '95, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the UN Charter, 98, Universal Declaration on Human Rights, 99, the 50th of the Geneva Conventions on the Protection of Victims of War, and now the 25th anniversary of the Palermo Protocol, but no reason for celebration. No, we should actually mobilize. And mobilize, including us, because we need to support existing international instruments in human rights, protection for all, for every human being, labor law, addressing wage theft, addressing unsafe conditions and forced overtime, migration and refugee law, international humanitarian law protecting victims of war, maritime law, stronger enforcement at sea to protect workers and rescue victims, environmental law, because the destruction of the environment is quite often done with the use of slave labor, and this destruction fuels modern slavery. International economic law, we must ensure that trade and investment respect labor and human rights, and monitor supply chains. We'll come to that later also. AI regulation, because definitely, as already some people said here, AI could be used for enabling or profiting from exploitation. You know, we use slave workers to feed the machines. And criminal law, yes, Lisa, definitely, we need effective criminal law to deliver justice and provide compensation for victims and survivors. So now, what shall we do? I think we should definitely, we as religious congregations, communities, advocate for generous interpretation and robust implementation of existing laws. And, when necessary, campaign for new domestic laws and international treaties. And history shows that actually, in 1997, for example, we had the Ottawa Convention against anti-personnel landmines. In 1998, we had the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Law, Criminal Courts, and those two treaties were unexpected, were miracles. Miracles, but they were possible because you had alliances and coalitions of governments, like-minded governments, international organizations, and personalities. So, what I would like in conclusion, because I see, is that definitely we need to protect the dignity, not only legal, legal concepts, but actually the dignity, Ubuntu, or the golden rule of the watch. And actually, also I would end in one request, is that all of us should pray.
Yes.
And pray for victims, pray for helpers, and also pray for traffickers, because they need to be converted by our prayers, not only condemned by courts, but also actually to receive the mercy of our Creator and to possibly at one time use their ill-deserved profits for the benefit of victims. So, thank you.
Michel, thank you very much. Ahmed, I think what we might do is we'll start with Lizelle, but see if we could begin to transition now into a discussion of, after Lizelle's intervention, and is Bishop Grande here? We take the mic for a moment and talk about the efforts happening in the National Prosecution Authority to criminalize the act of trafficking, but also to build capacity. Would that be okay? Is that appropriate?
That's fine, thank you.
Again, Lizelle, Africa, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm from the National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa. I belong to a specific unit, a business unit that's part of the organization, and we are the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs unit. So even though I'm prosecution-based, and we're more of a policy development unit, and we also are responsible for the capacity building part of our mandate. So we deal with the whole of the GBV mandate, sexual offences, domestic violence, child justice issues, trafficking in persons, and child maintenance as well. So it's quite a broad mandate, and trafficking in persons is part of that mandate. So I just wanted to contextualize that. So in terms of the capacity building, we were very fortunate to have the HGI team sort of partner with us for a time. Even though we do have our own capacity building efforts, we saw the value in having a partner like HGI that specifically focuses on prosecution and the resources that they were able to give us as a country. It was piloted in the Western Cape, and I was fortunate to work very closely with the team. And I can tell you those resources are invaluable. We've seen tremendous increase in terms of the capacity that we've been able to build in the prosecutors that we were able to target. And unfortunately, because of what some of the speakers said previously, that funding has come to an end, so we don't have that relationship any longer. We're fortunate to still have some relationship with Lisa before she leaves the country. So we have our own capacity building efforts. We do have a national task team that does capacity prosecutors in trafficking in human trafficking. So we capacitate them on the law, we talk about social context issues in terms of sensitization, and we go around the country and we do this training. Unfortunately, we're not able to reach each and every prosecutor because of limited resources, and that is why HDI was helpful. We were building on that to be able to expand that to the rest of the country. But we do have our own capacity building efforts. Apart from that, because we are an active organization, we respond to crime, we react to crime, but we also have prevention efforts through our unit and through our one-stop GPD centers, which is called the Tutuzela Care Centers. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that. I'm sure our partners that work in the various parts of the provinces will have had some sort of interaction with the Tutuzela Care Centers because they would either refer or they would send the victims to those centers. So it's going to be too much to explain exactly what the Tutuzela Care Centers is all about. I'm happy to engage with you, after this. So through those initiatives, through our Tutuzela Care Centers, we do have preventative work. We engage with communities as NPA staff, as well as our stakeholder partners, your police, your social development, your health partners. So we go out as a team and we engage, and we even engage with our civil society organizations as well. So there is a lot of prevention work that is being done. But once again, I'd like to echo the word silos. I saw that here. I don't know a lot of these organizations when I work for the NPA. These are where our victims come from. I'm thinking whilst the colleagues were speaking, how many of those victims have actually come through the justice system? And I do understand, can you see, it does take long. There are a number of variables. It's sometimes out of our control, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't report, we shouldn't respond, we shouldn't sort of take these matters through the criminal justice system. And I can assure you we are trying to increase our efforts to be able to deal with it more appropriately, hence the partnering with organizations like HDI. So if we could have more of those initiatives, I think it would really help us a great deal. So that's on the collaboration. I speak for that, and I'm going to say a big thumbs up if we can get that and the coordination right. I also want to echo what Kevin said earlier in terms of criminal asset recovery funds. So we also have that in our country. That's called the CARA Fund, the Criminal Asset Recovery Account. So all the proceeds of crimes, and not only in the trafficking offences, but all crime in South Africa, if we are able to attach the perpetrator's assets, it goes into that fund. But once again, it's not freely available to victims of trafficking. I mean, we are on a big drive as the NPA now to actually motivate during our trials for compensation. HDI was going to help us with that as well, because we haven't been successful in that area where we actually can get compensation being ordered for a victim in a trafficking matter. So the CARA Fund is there and we can access it, and we've been able to access it through our unit, the specific unit for our Tutuzela Care Centers, because we work with victims of crime. We do empowering because the victims report there, we do the medical examinations, we do the psychosocial. So in order to be able to capacitate those centers, we've been able to get some funding. To do capacity building, because the organization doesn't always have the finances, we've been able to get finances to do capacity building as well. So the account does work. But you have to apply and you have to motivate, and that's a lot of red tape. So if it was made a little bit simpler, it might make it easier for us to be able to get that money back to victims as well, which is something that we haven't been able to do directly as yet. So I think those are things that we're still trying to work and we're still trying to look at. But I think overall, I feel very blessed to be a part of the session this afternoon. It was completely by chance. So I'm very happy to share, sort of what we've done. But I do think we have a greater responsibility globally to be able to ensure that our efforts, that we do prosecute traffickers, that we do stop traffickers. And it's not an easy task. I think one of the panel members spoke about victims of trafficking are not easy victims. There's a whole other dynamic, and are we aware of that? And I think this is what we are getting to grips with. And I just want to once again say, part of the resources that we got from HDI was how do I identify trafficking? So all of our Tutuzela Care Center staff, because they may come across a trafficking victim, were trained and were capacitated in how to identify, because you can't prosecute if you don't identify. And very often, and even with our own prosecutors, and a lot of them, when we did the capacity building with them and we spoke to them about identification of trafficking persons victims, a case presented as something else. It presented maybe as a theft. But the victim in that theft case was maybe a victim of trafficking. And because it was a foreigner, maybe it was somebody, you uncovered, a whole host of other things that maybe alerted you to the fact that potentially this is a victim of trafficking, and that then unfolded into a different type of investigation. So we had a lot of those sort of success stories that came out, but had we not known that we need to actually identify these victims, that we need to look for specific things when dealing with our cases and not sort of seeing it only as a sexual offense. There might have been a sexual exploitation. It's not just, sort of a father figure, sort of raping his child. Who is that father figure in reality? Maybe it's somebody that actually trafficked the child to be in that particular circumstance. So I just wanted to tell you that there are efforts being done. We're far from perfect. One last thing that I just want to talk about in terms of prevention activities. So we recently, as a Western Cape, as part of our structure, so in our provinces we have a trafficking persons task team that is a coordinated approach to response to victims. And we have a rapid response team that's more in law enforcement with prosecution, where you actually look and case manage specific cases. So these two structures speak to each other in provinces, because when you have a case and you actually have to go and police is going to do a raid, you actually need the support of the trafficking persons task team, because that's where all your resources are, like your medical doctors that would need to be on hand if you're going to go raid a place, your psychosocial, how are we going to actually deal with those victims? Is there shelter that we can take them to so that we can care for them? So part of that structure, specifically in the Western Cape, we had an engagement with AXA, specifically at the Cape Town International Airport, where we are actually using AXA personnel and training them up to be able to identify potential victims of trafficking or traffickers that are coming into the country. So we had a whole launch of that a few weeks ago. It's still in its infancy stages. The launch was kind of hijacked. We weren't ready yet, but government, anything good, they want to sort of highlight it. So we are busy with that engagement with AXA at the moment, and specific border patrol sort of personnel, so that we can train them up and we can work with them. So the moment it is identified, you activate your relevant resources like SAPS, the Hawks, the unit that deals with trafficking, the prosecutor on call, so that we can actually deal with them immediately once we've identified. So just to let you know, there's a lot of preventative aspects as well to the work that we do. We get it right sometimes, and sometimes we don't always, but I think these are the kinds of initiatives that's important for us to know, to see that we are serious as government, despite the fact that it may take a little bit longer. Thank you.
Lizelle, thank you very, very much. It may seem innocuous, but something as small as the word training. Did you notice how often in Lizelle's comments the word training came up? Training at the airport. I've spoken with Kevin over the years. Training police to ask the right questions that connect them with intelligence sources in order to detect links that go from a local situation to a global network of criminal organizations. If we're going to grab this training, Kevin, he's going to answer the question, but I'm going to anticipate when he's done. If there's anybody in the room, we probably have room for maybe one question, but then would like to go back to the panelists for their suggestions for specific steps to take. So, Kevin, and then a question possibly elsewhere from the audience.
And I'm going to be brief, Fred, because Lizelle just reminded me of so much. And when I look back, I was a police officer for 30 years and the Commissioner for Trafficking. And when I started working with religious orders and the diocese in London, I am of Catholic faith, but I've never brought it into my workplace. And then when we were working on trafficking, this is how, and I'll give you an operational thing. I won't go to the how we develop the relationship, because that was building trust. So a morning comes, and information comes in, saying we believe there's trafficking of girls. We didn't wait for victims. We checked the intelligence. Did the intelligence fit that? Was the premises there? We then find, yes, there is. So then we deploy surveillance. I, as a senior officer, can deploy undercover officers to do certain things. We deploy undercover officers for 4 days. Not all the time, but
Then we do surveillance, we get that. We then realise some of these women come from Nigeria. We then start to realise and put the case together, and we feel that we've got enough, particularly with the finances and the amount of aircraft that have been booked. The finances then showed, through looking at the finances, that this organised crime group owned 49 premises in London. That's millions and millions of pounds. We then go to the operational phase, where we're going to go into these premises at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, because we're more likely to find the traffickers in bed. We then go there, but who comes with us? Religious sisters. Religious sisters come with us, and they take away the victims. The victims go to their house. Some of the victims were spitting at police officers and wanted to bite them. We then find out later that some of those victims had been raped only 2 hours earlier. We then get the evidence and charge the people. I'm then at the Old Bailey, the most important court in the UK, with my team, and then suddenly one of our witnesses has a bit of a problem. And then the defence are challenging them. I needed to find a witness in Nigeria, and the judge gave me 36 hours. The process in court, as Lizelle would know, if you went through the official channels, when dealing with Nigeria, might take, if you're lucky, 6 months, or it may never happen. I phoned up a religious sister I'd met in Nigeria, and I said, I'm looking for this person, I'm in a real predicament. About 7 hours later, she phones me back and said, oh, I've got her here. Yeah, what do you want us to do? I said, could she get on a plane tomorrow to come to the court? She said, I'll ask her. Yeah, she will, if you sort out the visas and the tickets and all the rest of it. So I went back to the court, told the judge this. The defence said, hang on a second, can we change our plea? That was from a relationship. That brought down a whole criminal network that had 49 premises. We took all that, we took all their money. We put them in prison for 20 years. That is what trust does. And we did it at the Olympics. We worked with religious sisters, the health service. So when you're talking about building up relationships, and then I did a crazy thing according to some people. I employed a Nigerian priest living in London in my office as commissioner, as an advisor. That was one of the best things I ever did. So trust in faith, build trust, and the outcomes will be like that.
Thank you, Kevin. I think, Kevin, what you have said is now be open. I can give you also an example. I got into human trafficking because I was a pastor and I lived in Malta and I spoke Maltese. When the African boats started crossing from Libya, most of the men who were with the women with babies were traffickers. But the women were calling them their husbands. It's so difficult to identify. One of them, she told me something that said, he took my passport. And as a lawyer, I said to myself, that sounds like trafficking. She told me, I beg you. This one was begging me. He's the father of my son. My parents paid his parents money to bring me. I only had protection from this man across the desert to Libya. We have a son. I have to pay him back the money and the people. Please do not tell the police he's my trafficker. What do you do? So you need to, the trust issue, I needed, and she trusted me because she was sitting with white policemen and she could speak to me in Hausa. So I had to tell her, you my sister, I am concerned about you, and I'm concerned about, my husband was called Elliot, and I'm concerned about Elliot, but I'm concerned about Grace, your daughter, as well. This situation will not end. We need to get this money out of the question. It took us months. And for witnesses, it was easy. I just had to call people from the Libyan church. And they found me people, and they testified. This guy got arrested, was in prison for 10 years, and this woman was given money, and she was sent back to the jail. So, the issue of trafficking is a trust issue. Because you're dealing with people who would even deny that they are trafficked
because they know what is at stake. If my mother tells me, go get the money, you think I would betray my mother? I wouldn't betray my mother. So the collaborative work, the trust work that we are talking about, and maybe the people in the audience, you've got some experiences that you want to share with us, if you have anything. Before we go into these specific recommendations, we want to take 3 recommendations. Of course, we know funding. And I want to end by this. This year, the African Union has declared 2025 as Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. That is a subject no one wants to speak about. The complicity of the church in the transatlantic slave trade. The Roman Catholic popes have issued bulls for Portuguese princes to come to Africa because we are savages and because we are pagans. And they gave them the right by law to come and rape women and send our children as property and cargo to the New World. The recognition of that and to say sorry. Of course, the church has done a lot. But the recognition of this crime against the African people. The Jews had reparations. I was fortunate enough to be the person to write the concept note and the roadmap for the team of the year. I was one of the legal team persons who wrote that concept note. And we added a concept of healing. Because for us in Africa, if there is no healing to the crimes committed against us through apartheid, to colonization, to the slave trade, there can never be trust between us and the West. And we those who work within these institutions know people will go and talk, but there's no trust. That is why there's no implementation. For example, in the UN Security Council, Africa as the largest continent with the largest amount of states within the General Assembly has not got even a voice. And these systems come back from way back from that. So when we want to go to the G20, we must be specific. Sometimes it is not asking for charity. We are asking for justice and we are asking for repair. We were harmed and we must be repaired. We were harmed and we must receive justice. It's not only about money, but it's about the psychological healing that we as Africans are asking for. For a mother to send a child to the street, to prostitute, to sell themselves, shows you that our economies are really in dire need. So what can we say? And I think that this is what Kevin is saying. The 30 billion that we want is not charity. It's taking the money from the criminal to pay to the victim or to rehabilitate the victim. We're not asking for money. We're trying to get justice for those who have been irreparably harmed. How many of those girls will have children? Can you have a 15-year-old girl being raped 7 times a day? As Kevin was saying, go to London, go to Paris, go to our cities, even Cape Town. As we speak, this is happening right now. The impact on their minds, the impact on their spirits. And I think that this is where the faith community has an advantage. Because they will always find the church, or they will find the mosque to go to, or they will find a synagogue. That is their last resting place. Of all the harm that they get, they want to pray, as Sister has said, because they have the last resort. So we have to move from praying to seeking for justice, to seeking for repair for our communities. So this collaborative work that we are saying here is not just one person, but it's all of us. I would probably stop here. I don't know our time, but maybe we can give to the, okay, so I have a hand here. Do we have any? Okay, so we have a hand and we have a hand. So you go first, and then our dear sister will go second.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
please
I'm
be
going to do
brief.
this
Yeah.
to you. You need to say who you are.
Sorry?